The University of Louisville hired Kenny Payne as its next head men's basketball coach. We'll talk about first reactions and more on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by StatHero. StatHero is reshaping the way you play fantasy sports. Dozens of house-based games to play daily. No sharks, no funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/lockedon. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credentialed media member for Cardinals Sports Zone. I also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time, as always, to personally thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. It was finalized on Friday. Kenny Payne is the next head men's basketball coach for the University of Louisville. We'll talk about first reaction to the hire. We'll discuss some of the benefits that he brings to the table for the program, and then we'll finish out the show talking about the baseball team's sweep over the number one ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish over the weekend. Starting out with the initial hire of Kenny Payne, it was alluded to all week long, and then finally it was approved and announced on Friday morning, and this was something that most fans kind of expected. I know that Jeremy Wallman, Cardinal Sports Zone editor and co-founder, he was pretty much, adamant from the beginning that Kenny Payne was the guy. He ended up being the guy. I do want to apologize, though, to start out with. I know that this is kind of late. I've had some really bad Wi-Fi issues in the probably about the Wednesday to Saturday range. So this is really the first time that I was able to get this out there. So I apologize for this being delayed and stuff like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be a good week of content. A lot of men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, football, so on and so forth. A handful of guests to talk about. So we'll start out talking about the initial hire. I think that it's one of those that most Louisville fans kind of had a deep sigh of relief. I think that the majority of the fan base felt as if Kenny Payne was the guy that the Cardinals should hire. It seemed like the weeks leading up to it, there was a lot of he said, she said throughout the process, and fans got a little antsy with it being, Chris Mack agreeing to the buyout at the end of January. There was about a month and a half of, no news. It was a very, tight-lipped situation to where there weren't a lot of leaks. And I got to give a quick shout out. I think that Louisville interim athletic director Josh Heird did a fantastic job with this hire, not only with the hire itself, because that's important, but I also feel like the way that he went about this hire. Number one, the fact that there weren't many leaks, there were talks, Bruce Pearl early on, but, when he got the contract extension, it was pretty quickly put to rest of those rumors. But since then, there weren't a lot of leaks. In fact, there probably wasn't any, from the national side of things, even from the local media. Like I said, there was a lot of hearsay. There was a lot of he said, she said. That's why things kind of made the fan base so antsy, so, cautious, so nervous and concerned, is because there hadn't really been, a list of candidates that had come out, or even, notifications like, hey, Louisville interviewed this guy or Louisville interviewed that guy. The only real thing that we got from Josh Heird was, hey, we are making we're doing our due diligence. We are going through and we are, hiring a search firm. We're vetting candidates. We're talking with candidates and stuff like that. And I think that Josh Heird doing his due diligence, I think that he handled this really well. And I'm not saying that, he's going to get the athletic director position, because I think that, it seems like we're still a little ways away for that. But I feel as if, Josh Heird really did good things in this coaching search. I think that he fit his timeline, got the hire kind of right after the season, a week after the season, to where the Louisville doesn't have to wait any longer to start recruiting, to start getting things together and trying to get the roster together. But I also feel like he did his homework. He went through it the right way. He didn't just say, "Okay, I've got my candidate. Let's go hire him, and we'll be done with it." I don't think that that's how he operated. I think that he made some interviews. He went through the vetting process. He did a great job of just exhausting all avenues of research and ultimately, making sure that this was the right fit for the University of Louisville. When Jeremy Wallman hops on the show this week, we're going to discuss ultimately, what we liked from the press conference. But for starters, I think that Josh Heird did well at the press conference as well. He's caught in a lot of flack because people say, okay, well, if Kenny Payne is the guy, why is he not hired right now? The season ended 13 minutes ago. Why is Kenny Payne not being announced as the next Louisville men's head basketball coach? I think that's literally just just the impatience of the fan base, just the antsiness and overall kind of caution to believe that Kenny Payne was the guy, because we just didn't have any information on what the inside was looking like for the most part. So ultimately, shout out to Mr. Heird. Definitely appreciative of this coaching search, how he not only made the hire, but handled himself and handled the publicity of the hire as well. Very, very excited for this hire. I think that Kenny Payne checks off a lot of boxes of what you were looking for in the next head basketball coach of this program in particular. When it comes to recruiting, when it comes to unifying the fan base, when it comes to success, so on and so forth. We'll talk more about that here in the next segment. But ultimately, I think the main reaction for me was just relief, because I had gotten on the Kenny Payne train, ever since his name kind of got mentioned in talks a couple months ago, when it seemed like, Chris Mack wasn't going to be the head coach next season. I remember thinking to myself, who do I believe is going to be able to return Louisville to its national to its prominence on the national level? I think that this is the right hire. There have been some concerns about this hire due to lack of experience, so on and so forth. But I do think that this is the right hire for the university. We'll break that down throughout the next week and a half, 2 weeks, when we talk about the staff being added, some possible recruiting and stuff like that. But ultimately, pretty solid hire. I think people will say that it was the obvious hire, and I'm not saying you're wrong or anything like that. But I think that the thing that impresses me most about Josh Heird was his just attention to detail. And, what I mean by that is just researching a lot of candidates and making sure that, I think the biggest fallacy is that you can truly, the fallacy is that, both things can be true at one time. You can truly believe that Kenny Payne might be the guy for the job, but going through and doing your homework and making sure that this is the right decision for the university, I respect that line of thinking from Mr. Heird. And, overall glad to have him, have made this hire. So, but despite if you think it's obvious or not, I think it's the right hire. Obviously, you still have to win basketball games, but the way that this has unified the fan base already, I mean, we're starting to see the decision pay dividends already, right? So we'll talk about why Kenny Payne is the right man for the job here in the next segment, after we talk about our friends, beginning with the title sponsor of the show, StatHero. I love March Madness, and I love these brackets, but sometimes I can't even really remember the last time I was truly successful when it comes to, going deep in the tournament with a successful bracket, or winning any money in a company pool or anything like that. That's why I feel like you need to learn from my mistakes and go to StatHero. StatHero allows you to hedge bets with NCAA Pick'em contests. Their Pick'ems pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. In addition to their Pick'em games, they also have dozens of lineups you can They simply post sets of players for you to take on with a set of players that you choose. This is simply what daily fantasy was meant to be. So you can sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon while using the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. Also want to talk about our friends over at Built Bar. Late March, mid to late March is usually kind of the year where, my resolutions were long out the window. I've given up on them by now, but this year I have stayed committed to eating right. And one of the reasons why I've been able to do that is through Built Bar. It is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's made with 100% real chocolate. There are a variety of different flavors. If they think that a flavor is going to taste good, they will make it. They'll figure out how to make it healthy after. Like I mentioned, covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high in protein. You can go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart and check out all of the numbers and the figures. At Built Bar, they're all about taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy after. And I don't know how, but it seems like they pull it off every single time. So you need to do yourself a favor. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Once again, that's use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. As always, I want to take this time to thank you personally for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. The Kenny Payne hire, in my opinion, was the right decision for a couple different reasons. I think that, number one, unifying the fan base, I feel like has to be at the forefront of why I feel good about this decision. I've never seen this fan base as divided as it is now. Obviously, with technology, there are a lot of great benefits, but one of the drawbacks is the fact that social media sometimes can create a division between a group, in this case, a fan base, a country, even a family. So on and so forth. So, social media has really kind of been a villain when it comes to trying to keep a fan base unified, because I feel like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because, at the end of the day, it's really just differentiating opinion. But when, a lot of people have access to that opinion, you'll see some more division than you would have, this time a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And I'm not saying that social media is the root of all evil, and I'm not saying that this little fan base is, not able to be reunited, because I think we're seeing that now. I'm just saying that opinions are more accessible. It's more of on a grand scale, more of a mainstream. So you're seeing a lot more opinions, and I feel like over the past couple of years, the Louisville fan base, over a handful of different issues and debates and stuff like that, has just gotten so divided. And I feel like this hire had the potential to immediately see some results in getting this fan base reunited, and it's doing that. Once he got hired, or once the word was out that Kenny Payne was getting hired, I haven't seen this fan base rejoice in a way like it had over the weekend in quite some time. It was definitely a breath of fresh air. So at the end of the day, I like it for that reason, in the sense that it reunifies this fan base, or it unifies the fan base, unites it. Because at the end of the day, I think that that's one thing that kind of makes me upset as a Louisville fan, is seeing how divided this fan base gets. Also, from the recruiting aspect of things, I think that that is a big aspect of this as well. It's been talked about over and over of how good of a recruiter Kenny Payne is on Kentucky's staff, so on and so forth. His affiliations with Nike, his affiliations with Adidas. Kenny Payne said in his press conference that, the Nike relationship is not a working relationship. It's a family relationship. So, I'm not implying that, any, Nike benefiting is going to go down or anything like that. I do think that Kenny Payne is just a very solid recruiter. I think that, you have a guy that players are really able to relate to. He's very well spoken. I think that his priorities, he has his priorities in the right place of wanting what's best, not only for the university, but for the student athletes. And, this is a two-way relationship is what he called it in his press conference. He said, look, yeah, it has to be good for the university, but it also has to fit for the recruit personally, because they have dreams as well. And he wants dream chasers. He wants guys that want to go to Louisville to sacrifice something, sacrifice time, with hard work, with passion, with dedication to achieve those goals for both the player and for the university. So I think that Kenny Payne, his vision for what this program can be, I really am glad that he is at the helm. Recruiting, obviously, we've talked about, their possibility of Louisville becoming a big player for DJ Wagner, the number one recruit in the 2023 recruiting class. There's a handful of other guys that have been talked about, possible 2022 five-star point guard Sky Clark, the Kentucky decommitment. He's another player that has been rumored to possibly be taking a look at Louisville. And then obviously you have some possible five-star 2023 five stars that could possibly look into reclassifying. Outside of unifying the fan base, recruiting, you also have the aspect of player development. The players that have played for him in the past, at Kentucky, we're talking about Anthony Davis, Julius Randle, who just came out after the hire and was very, very adamant that he, owes a lot to Kenny Payne in terms of player development. We saw what Kenny was able to do for Julius Randle, for R.J. Barrett up with the Knicks, Willie Cauley-Stein at Kentucky, Nick Richards, P.J. Washington, the list goes on. Not only has Kenny Payne been rumored to be a great recruiter, or not rumored, proven to be a great recruiter, he's also been very, very solid in the aspect of player development. So I think that, being able to develop the players on the roster, recruit very solid players on the team, and then also be able to unite the fan base. It just feels like the right hire for a couple of different reasons, right? There obviously is the aspect of head coaching experience. What do the X's and O's look like? What is the scheme? What is the game plan, etc., so on and so forth. But I just feel like, you unify the fan base, not only the fan base, but you get a lot of former players on board. You get, possibly some big-time donors back on board, and then obviously the fan base and stuff like that. So on and so forth. There's a lot of benefits for this hire. Now, obviously, you have to be patient. The expectation shouldn't be that Kenny Payne's going to win a national title in year one with the program, nor would possibly any coach that comes in, whether they're in the college realm or NBA, or, whether they're coaching the number one team in the country or the worst team in the country. I think that there's some work that needs to be done with this roster. And I am very confident that with Kenny Payne's ability to recruit, his ability to, just ultimately relate with the student athletes, the recruits, and be able to recruit not only them but their families as well. And once they get to Louisville, the aspect of developing them, both as young men and as players on the basketball court, a very, very solid hire in my opinion for the University of Louisville men's basketball program. And as I mentioned, we're going to continue to talk about Kenny Payne and the hire itself over the next week as we head into April. So, but with the final segment of the show, I want to take a little bit of a step back with women's basketball having not played yet by the time that this is recorded. This is being recorded at 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And then obviously, possible matchup in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 wouldn't necessarily be determined until tomorrow night anyway. We're going to hold off on the women's basketball section of the show until the Tuesday episode. So with the conclusion of this one, we'll talk about the baseball team sweeping the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Sweeping the number one ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish over the weekend. The Cardinals are on a roll. We'll talk about what went right for the Cardinals and why I told you at the beginning of the season it was not the right time to panic. Dan McDonald's team has looked like they have turned a corner. We'll discuss why that is here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. It's that time of the year again. College basketball's tournament is in the full swing of things. You need to get in on this opportunity. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. It remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source For all of your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting in your favorite Vegas casino games, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Final segment of the show, the baseball team. A clean sweep over the number 1 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish over the weekend. The Cardinals are now 16-4 on the season. They are winners of their last 6. That includes, a win against TCU. I guess it doesn't include that, but they have a win against TCU in a midweek game. The 15th ranked Horned Frogs. A series win over Michigan. A win over Northern Kentucky, and then Bellarmine, and then obviously the sweep over Notre Dame. 16-11 on Friday, 8-1 on Saturday, 7-5 on Sunday. We'll start out talking about the 16-11 game. I think that it started out a little up and down. Obviously, it went back and forth. The teams took turns getting runners across the plate. Tate Keener kind of struggled. The Friday starter only pitched 3 innings, 6 hits, 5 earned runs. Ryan Hawks got the win, but in his 3 innings, he gave up 6 hits and 5 earned runs for Keener, 5 earned runs for Ryan Hawks. Got a good inning from Garrett Schmeltz. Caleb Corbett gave up an earned run, and then Michael Persecki shut the door on the Fighting Irish. But overall, it was a big game for the Cardinal offense. 16 runs, home runs from Cameron Masterman and Levi Usher. A lot of doubles in this one. Logan Beard had 1, Jack Payton had 2, Knapcheck had 1, and Dalton rushing as well. Just an overall aspect of the Cardinals putting it on a team, and I think that this offense has really, really been solid. We saw that on Saturday when the Cardinals went 8-1. Jared Poland on the mound, the Saturday starter, had another good outing, perhaps one of his best outings as a Cardinal. 7 innings of 3-hit baseball, 0 runs allowed, 10 strikeouts to 1 walk. Ben Wigman had only pitched, 1/3 of an inning, gave up an earned run, and then Evan Webster came in 1 2/3 innings and shut the door on the Fighting Irish. And then we turn to the Sunday matchup. The ability to sweep the Fighting Irish was put on the Cards' shoulders on Sunday. Louisville opened up with a 1-0 lead with a Masterman advancing to second. Metzinger scored on a wild pitch. And then Notre Dame went out and took the lead 2-1 in the 4th. Cardinals put up a 3 spot in the 6th inning. Notre Dame answered with a 3 spot. And then the Cardinals 2-on, 2-out in the bottom of the 8th inning. Isaac Humphrey, the outfielder, hit an absolute, it was a tank to right field. I think 416 feet. It was a moonshot. The Cardinals went ahead and they won the matchup against the Irish. On the mound for the Cardinals, Riley Phillips has put together a really impressive season so far. Pitched 6 innings, had a quality start, gave up only 2 earned runs. Cade Grundy kind of struggled. I forget how many batters he faced, but he gave up an earned run, 2 walks, struggled with command. Kyle Walter, an innings worth of work. Michael Persecki as well, both of them pitching an inning each with 1 strikeout, no hits, no walks, no runs earned. So I thought it was a great weekend for the Cardinals. Offense, I think that, they didn't score less than 7. Cardinals offense has been great all year. It's really been the pitching staff, Tate Keener, Jared Poland, and now, Riley Phillips. It seems like the weekend starters have been solid. You have guys in the bullpen, like Michael Persecki, so on and so forth, that have been solid, but they need to have, more players step up and be consistent, especially for a midweek starter. I think Seamus Barrett has the stuff. He has the stuff to be a very, very solid pitcher. But I think the name of the game with him and a lot of other of these guys that don't necessarily have a ton of experience, it's a matter of getting the consistency down and the command, finding the strike zone, stuff like that. And once they get the command down, if this pitching staff, especially if this bullpen can pick up some of the slack, I think that this Cardinal team is. The sky is the limit. This team should definitely be ranked come the new rankings. You're 16-4. There's teams in the top 25 that have more than 4 losses, and coming off of a top 20 win against TCU a couple weeks ago, and now 3 straight wins over the number 1 team in the country, according to Baseball America, in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, entering the weekend with 1 loss. They go back to South Bend with 4. So very, very excited for the Cardinals. The Cardinals will turn around and play the last game of the homestand on Tuesday as they host Lipscomb, 6 o'clock, first pitch at Jim Patterson Stadium. They then travel on the road for their first ACC series with the Boston College Eagles up in Brighton, Massachusetts. So, quick turnaround, obviously long season, so you have to have a little bit of a short-term memory and be able to turn the page, never get too high, never get too low. But ultimately, very, very, very ecstatic about the weekend that the baseball team just had. They should be ranked come the new rankings, whenever that may be. But, before we get out of here, I want to give a shout-out to the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast. You can check out the most recent one at cardinalsportszone.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. There's probably going to be 2 episodes for Tuesday. We'll talk about the women's basketball side of things with a mailbag segment to cap off that episode. We'll also have a special guest for the episode or for the Tuesday slate to talk about spring football, so on and so forth. Now, do yourself a favor, make Locked On NFL Draft your second listen of the day. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. But that's going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. It's going to be a jam-packed week full of content. Sorry for all of the delays and the days where there haven't been a show. There are going to be plenty for you to listen to this week as the month of March winds down, somewhat comes to an end. I think there's 2 weeks left of March, but I digress. That'll wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, have a great week, go Cards, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.